All right, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is going to be my group stage, actually my entire FIFA World Cup predictions for this year. We are going to start with Group A. That consists of Mexico, South Korea, South Africa, and Czechia. The World Cup will open with South Africa taking on Mexico. That's going to take place in Mexico at, I believe, the Azteca, which should give Mexico a big advantage. I have them taking that game 2-1 or 2-0. After that, we will see South Korea take on Czechia. And I have that one ending up as a draw between the two nations. I think both teams are going to try and make a strong statement out of the gate, and that's going to end up with neither team being able to take true advantage of the other one and them ending 1-1. That would leave us with Mexico atop the group, followed by South Korea and the Czech Republic, 2 and 3, and South Africa at the bottom on 0 points. However, on match day 2 of the group, we would see South Africa take on the Czech Republic and Mexico take on South Korea. This is where things get interesting, I think. I think that the Czech Republic easily handles South Korea 3, maybe even 4-1, which would initially leapfrog them to the top of the group here. Now, the reason that they would go to the top is based off of goal differential. They would have 2, maybe 3 goals on Mexico, in goal differential. That would put them either draw straight even with Mexico or slightly above. After that, we have Mexico and South Korea, which again, game takes place in Mexico. That should give Mexico a benefit. But I think that South Korea is probably the strongest team in this group. I actually have them pulling off the upset by a score of 2-1. That puts the Czech Republic and South Korea tied on points at 4 apiece, but the Czech Republic has a higher goal differential. Mexico would fall all the way down to 3rd, while South Africa would be nestled in 4th. After that, on the final match day, we would see South Africa play South Korea and Mexico play the Czech Republic. Now, obviously, with Mexico being one of the hosts, they do have the benefit of this being at the Azteca one more time, and I think that will be enough to propel them to a win in the game. However, I only have them jumping up to second. Because even though they beat the Czech Republic, South Korea handles business against South Africa and takes the top of the group. That would leave the Czech Republic with 4 points, with a plus probably what I'm going to say is about 3, maybe 4 goal differential. It's really going to be dependent on how much they can beat South Africa by. I don't think Mexico beats them by more than 1, maybe 2 goals, but I also think that 4 points will be enough to advance the Czech Republic out of the group stage off of being one of the top 3rd place qualifiers, with there being so many 3rd place qualifiers this year. Okay, with that being said, that brings us to Group B, which consists of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Canada, Qatar, and Switzerland. Now, this is a very interesting group. I feel like it's one of the weaker groups overall at the World Cup. However, with that being said, I do feel like it's up for grabs who ends up taking this. Canada will open up the matches for this group, as their first match day will actually be split. Match day 2 of the World Cup will see Canada and the United States both having a game, while the other members of their group wait for match day 3 to have their first game. It will all take place, I believe, at the same time as Group C is having their first match day. But with that being said, Canada is going to play Bosnia and Herzegovina first out of everybody in their group. And I think this is one of those games that could really set the tone for this group. I think that Canada ends up pulling off a win here, but it could be a really dirty 3-2, kind of back and forth. Nobody really has a clear lead at any point. It's all up for grabs going into those final minutes game, where even though Canada comes out on top and gets those 3 points, it leaves Bosnia and Herzegovina it leaves Bosnia and Herzegovina with a good feeling as they move on towards their next round or next opponent. After that, you have Qatar and Switzerland, and Qatar is a country that's really hard to get a read on. Because if you remember back to their own home World Cup, they struggled to get out of the group stage as it was. Now, with that being said, I think they could perform a little bit better here, but it's going to depend on how they are able to handle some of these other countries. Switzerland, on the other hand, really struggled. No, was that Switzerland? No. Sorry. Sweden was the team that struggled. Having both of them in the same group in Europe was a little confusing at times. Switzerland actually ran through their group fairly easily, and I think that's what's going to be the difference here. I think Switzerland ends up beating Qatar, and I'm going to say that off a goal differential off of match day 1, we see that Bosnia and Herzegovina ends up third in this group. Now, with that being said, it will be interesting to see how the rest of the group unfolds. Bosnia and Herzegovina did have to fight their way through the European qualifier to make it this far in the first place. So they will end up actually playing Switzerland second. And that will be a very interesting match to watch, because I feel like that will set the tone for if Bosnia and Herzegovina will be able to make it out of the group at all. I feel like they can't drop points to both Switzerland and Canada, but I think, unfortunately, that's what's going to happen, and it's probably going to be a close game, say 2-0, 3-1, something along that line, but I think it's going to be enough that Bosnia and Herzegovina ends up getting bounced from the World Cup after this, as one of the third place teams that don't move on. But I will have to double check once I get through all the groups just to see where I'm at feeling wise with some of these third place teams. Like the Czech Republic, I feel very confident that they will end up being one of the third place teams that moves on to the second round. Bosnia and Herzegovina, I'm not as sure about. Canada versus Qatar, I hate to do this because Qatar has qualified for the World Cup, and they deserve respect for that. But just looking back at their record in the 2022 World Cup, 0-3 at a home World Cup, giving up 7 goals and having a -6 goal differential, I just find it hard to put any stock in them making noise at this World Cup. I think that Canada and Switzerland, the differentiation between this, outside of playing each other, is going to come down to who can get more goals against Qatar. I think that ends up being Canada, as Canada will get to play them in a group stage, having had that first game to really ramp themselves into it in Vancouver at home. It'll give Canada a chance to really take that step forward and show their mettle as they take on a team that really should probably be ranked below them and should be an easy win for Canada. After that, we'll see the third match day, which will be the big one, Canada versus Switzerland and Bosnia and Herzegovina versus Qatar. The more important one of these is the Canada-Switzerland game. That decides who tops the group and who comes in second. And I think Canada is a great team. I think that they deserve to be at this World Cup, even beyond being an automatic qualifier for being one of the host countries. I feel like that they are getting to a place where they can start to truly make some noise on a global stage. However, it's still a really good Switzerland team. I have them beating Canada here and taking the top of Group B. Bosnia and Herzegovina, like I said, I have them winning probably 2-0. I'm not sure it's going to be enough to make up a full goal differential. They still may be in the negative goal differential wise, but like I said, we'll have to see how some of these other groups shake up, because there are some groups coming up that just the third place team that it's going to be, I'm not entirely sure I trust yet. With that being said, we're going to actually go ahead and skip over. No, we'll do Group C next. I was going to say we'll skip over to Group D since USA plays on match day 2, but there's not really any reason to do that. Group C: Brazil, Morocco, Scotland, Haiti. This is one of those groups that a lot of people have been talking about because they are a little bit annoyed that Haiti is at this World Cup. Haiti deserves to be here. They made it through a very difficult qualifying, and I get it. You look at Haiti, you look at Italy, and one of those teams might make noise, the other one might not. But Italy hasn't qualified for a World Cup in the last 3 cycles, at least. There are a lot of spots for European teams to make it, and they have failed to do so. With that being said, though, I think I'm going to go ahead and make the most obvious choice here. I have Haiti at the bottom of the group when it comes down to it. They are not going to be a team that is happy to be here. They are going to want to make noise, and I think that they can make noise. I think that they are going to come in to their game against all these heavy hitters and really try and knock somebody down, and they have a great opportunity to do that going up against Scotland in game 1. But I think when it all boils down to it, this is going to be a game that takes place in Boston, Massachusetts. It's going to be up north. It's going to be a little bit further away from where their base would probably centrally be located. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm going to have Haiti lose this one, say 2-1. It'll be close. They'll get their goal. They'll be able to celebrate a little bit, but that'll be about as far as it goes. All right, so I think I just got done talking about Haiti, Scotland. I had to step away for a second, so I am back now. Brazil, Morocco. That is the other first game of this group, and that is a huge game because it will probably decide who ends up topping this group in the long run. Now, Morocco, if you guys remember, really shocked the world with their deep, deep run into the World Cup last year, or last round, so 22, where they ended up coming home, I believe, 4th in that World Cup. I think that they continue that momentum and actually pull off the upset of Brazil, elevating themselves to the top of the group as they move on, or as they move closer to taking the Group C lead spot. However, that brings us up to match day number 2. And for match day 2, we see Brazil take on Haiti and Morocco take on Scotland. And this is a very important match day because I think Brazil is able to beat down on Haiti probably 4-0. Again, Haiti, very good team, but I think they're just going to end up being outmatched overall by the quality of teams in their group. This is probably one of the strongest groups at the World Cup. So I think that even though they definitely deserve to be here, there's going to be a lot of, unfortunately, not a lot of chance for them to get a lot of points. So I think that they end up getting beaten by Brazil fairly handily. And then Morocco, Scotland. This is an interesting one because with Morocco's win over Brazil, if Brazil wants to win the group, they almost have to win this game in order to have a chance at that. So with that being said, what I think is going to end up happening is that Brazil is going to overcommit to winning, and what actually happens is that Scotland is able to get a crucial 4th point out of their group. This is a very feisty Scotland team looking to make history as the first Scottish side to advance out of the first round of the World Cup. So I think what will happen is Morocco will be clear at 6. Scotland will have 4 points and actually have a chance at winning the group. And then Brazil will be knocked out of winning the group, but still have a chance to advance at 1. Now, final match day, Brazil, Haiti. I think that one goes pretty swimmingly for Brazil. They end up beating Haiti. They do it by enough of a margin that there's no question that if they are the third place team, they will advance out of the group stages. Morocco versus Scotland, however, will be a much more interesting contest. Because here's the thing, if Scotland wins, they can not only advance out of the group stage for the first time in their country's history, they will have topped their group. However, I think that their magic starts to run a little thin here, and what happens is they actually end up dropping the game to Morocco, and it ends up being a 4-1, 3-1 affair that drops them just below Brazil, leaving Scotland sweating as the second highest third-ranked team out of the groups so far, but it's still a point where Scotland could easily qualify. It just will depend on how some of the other third places go in the long run. Ecuador opens against Ivory Coast, and Germany opens against Curacao, which means I think Germany will hold the top spot in the group, as they will end up getting the bigger win and having the better goal differential. The second day of match games for Group E will be Ecuador versus Ivory Coast and Germany versus Ivory Coast and Ecuador versus Curacao. Again, same thing. I think that what ends up happening is that Germany ends up winning, Ecuador ends up winning big. They'll probably sit roughly about the same in the standings. And then I think the Ivory Coast and Curacao is a very interesting game because either team is going to have to win to want to have a chance to move on. But I think this is where things end up having a draw happen, to where Curacao ends up actually holding Ivory Coast back from being able to look at advancing, as both teams end on 1 point. I'm going to have Ivory Coast above Curacao here just by goal differential. And then that brings us to the final match of Group E, which is Ecuador versus Germany. I'm actually going to put Ecuador above Germany here. I think they end up shocking, maybe not even shocking the world, but I think they end up pulling off the group win, and it allows them to jump Germany and take home first in the group, setting them up better in the long run for the knockout stages. We then move on to Group F, which is the Netherlands, Japan, Tunisia, and Sweden. This is a very hard group to judge going in. The Netherlands are very clearly the favorite in this group. Japan is a very good side that has a lot of history at the World Cup. Tunisia, not as much history, a lot more of a question mark. And then Sweden. Sweden just absolutely fell apart in European qualifiers. They probably should not have made the World Cup. They had to rely on their Nations League results to make the playoff for the World Cup. Now, once they made the playoff, they were fine. They were able to win that playoff and make it in. However, they didn't win a single game in their qualifier to try and advance to the World Cup. With that being said, I think Netherlands ends up topping the group easily. They play Japan on the first match day, which I think will play into their hands, as they are able to kind of just punch Japan in the face and knock them back and knock them a little silly. Tunisia versus Sweden, I think, is going to end up going the way of Sweden. It's hard for me to say that Sweden's going to completely have to pull themselves back together. I feel like they are already going to kind of be pulled back together. I think World Cup qualifying kind of was a wake-up call to them about what they needed to focus on. However, Sweden's second match day is going to be against the Netherlands, which is going to be a big one. Now, that leaves both Japan and Tunisia on 0 points going into their head-to-head matchup, and this is one where I think that Japan ends up beating Tunisia to get their 3 points to kind of set things off or get things going in the right direction for them as they start to recover a little bit from that first little stumble that they had. I think that the Netherlands end up essentially wrapping up the group with a win over Sweden here, and then they'll end up beating Tunisia in their final game, take the group with the full 9 points. One of the few people to actually do that in my group stages so far. I think up to this point, everybody has had at least one loss outside of maybe Ecuador, who I think also just got 9, but everybody else in these top couple groups has picked up at least one loss. Sweden and Japan is very interesting to me. It's the final match day game, and I think what's going to end up happening is that Sweden on 4 points is going to try and hold Japan back from on 6 points. Sweden beats Tunisia, loses to Netherlands, final match day against Japan. Okay, so Sweden would be on 3 points here, up against Japan on 3. I think what will end up happening is that Japan ends up pulling off the win, leaving Sweden having to wait it out, but as one of the stronger third place teams. So what I think is that right now, Czech Republic's still going to be the top of the third place teams, and they will be locked into moving on. Scotland and Paraguay, I think, will be higher up the third place list, and Scotland actually will be on the bubble as it stands. Paraguay will get locked in with Sweden. Sweden is going to be, actually, I think Sweden would be on the bubble, and then Scotland, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast just, unfortunately, on 1 point, is likely going to be locked out of making it and moving on. That will bring us over to Group G, where we have Belgium, Iran, Egypt, and New Zealand. Belgium and Egypt play match day 1, and this could be trouble for Egypt here. I think that Belgium is one of the stronger teams in the group. It's probably going to be between them and Iran for who takes the top spot in the group, and I think part of that has to do with the fact that on match day 1, Egypt's going to get beat. And I think that's going to send Egypt trying to find their footing as they go into match day 2. I think Iran beats New Zealand, and that leaves us with Egypt versus New Zealand in match day 2 to decide who's essentially eliminated from the group's contention as they will play each other. I think Belgium ends up I think that Belgium-Iran will end up as a draw, leaving it up to match day 3. I will go ahead and say that at this point I have Iran with the better goal differential, and I think that this game is going to truly show which team will be on the goal differential train, or which team will be more likely to get the goal differential, as they will turn their attention to Egypt and New Zealand, where I actually have New Zealand pulling off the upset here of Egypt and getting a full 3 points. No, you know what? Actually, I take that back. I think it's going to end up being a draw. I think the 3 points is a little much. I hope that New Zealand does good, but I think it's much more reasonable to expect them to get a draw here, which still would, for all intents and purposes, eliminate Egypt from moving on as a top spot. But that moves us to Belgium, New Zealand, Iran, Egypt, and I think this is where Belgium takes the top of the group back, as Egypt actually pulls off the upset of Iran, but it will not be enough to switch their spots. It might be enough, though, to move Egypt on 4 points. They will be the third highest 4-point team, or the third highest 4-point team, with the Czech Republic and Paraguay as the other two. On to Group H. In Group H, we have Spain, Uruguay, Saudi Arabia, and Cape Verde. This is a very, very difficult group. Probably the group of death at this World Cup, though that could also be Group I with France, Senegal, Norway, and Iraq. Looking at this group, Spain and Uruguay are my top 2. Spain's my top spot here. It's hard for me to see Cape Verde getting a fair shakedown. I think they kind of got screwed over with the group selection in this phase. Saudi Arabia is a very strong team, and it is very interesting to me whether or not they are going to be able to make enough noise to really take a third place spot. I think that if this were, say, the 2020 or the 2030 World Cup, then it might be a different conversation. However, I'm going to be honest, as of right now, I'm going to go with Spain at the top, Uruguay second, Saudi Arabia third, Cape Verde fourth. Um, and that is primarily due to the fact that I have Spain as probably my personal favorite to win the World Cup. And then Saudi Arabia and Uruguay play match day one. And like we've seen in the past, Saudi Arabia is able to pull off big upsets. Here, I think it ends up being just a draw that is the big upset, but it's enough for Saudi Arabia to get that first point. They'll end on 4. I want to say they're going to end on 4, but I'm not sure about Cape Verde here. Like, it's hard for me to say that they're just going to outright get blanked on points, and you almost have to have that for them to end on, for Saudi Arabia to end on 4 points. I think Spain takes top with 9. Maybe they only get 7 if Uruguay really puts up a fight here. I'm going to say that Uruguay gets 4 points and Saudi Arabia ends up with 2. It's a very disappointing end for Saudi Arabia, and like I said, I could easily see Saudi Arabia being one of the top third place teams. It's just the fact that at some point somebody has to be a third place team that doesn't move on. So I think that's going to end up being Saudi Arabia as one of our 4. Group I, France, Senegal, Norway, and Iraq. This is one heck of a group to have to pick just 2 teams. It's going to be insane. Like, this is going to be the group to watch at the World Cup, and thankfully most of the games are at a reasonable time, at least here in the States. You open with France and Senegal as the first game, and I think that both sets of first games are going to be draws. We're going to see 1 point across the board moving on into the second day of games, where France will then proceed to take on Iraq, and Norway will play Senegal. And I do think that'll be where France and Norway take one of the top 2 spots. But I think Norway will get the higher spot off of goal differential initially. So that'll leave Iraq and Senegal tied with 1 point, but Iraq with the higher goal differential in hand. And then I think France actually beats Norway on the final match day. And what will end up happening and be the biggest part in all of this is Iraq beats Senegal by enough that they're able to leapfrog Norway into the playoffs, or into the knockout stage, while Norway will definitely make it as a third place finisher who moves on. Senegal, I really want to see them do well. It's just this is a group of 4. Like, if you put any of these 4 in another group, they are definitely moving on through an automatic spot. Not as a third place team, through an automatic spot. And it's just, who is the one team that I think isn't going to be able to break through? And unfortunately for me, that's going to be Senegal here. All right, on to Group J. We have the defending champions Argentina, Austria, Algeria, and Jordan. The A group in Group J, for whatever reason. Like, obviously they have to do that because Mexico's the host, but that would be really funny if that was Group A. Argentina, I think that they have an easy time in the group stage here. This is not striking me as that loud of a group. I think they'll have some games where they have to figure some things out, but it gives them a chance to get their feet underneath them as they proceed to move on into the knockout stage atop the group. Austria and Algeria, though. So Austria will play Jordan in the first day, and then Algeria will play Argentina. I could see Algeria actually pulling off the upset day one, like happened with Saudi Arabia a few years ago, but I think what will end up happening is that at most that'll be a draw, and then Argentina will turn it on against Austria on match day 2, while Algeria and Jordan end up drawing again. And then Algeria ends up picking up a big win over Austria, as Argentina and Jordan end up with Argentina winning to secure the top of the group. Algeria gets second, and Austria has to sweat it out on the final match day to see if they will move on or not. That brings us to our last two groups, and as you can see, I've kind of picked up the pace here. I tried to break every single match down, but there are just so many groups, it's hard for me to really have something unique to say about each of these matches. So we're just going to pick up the pace a little bit, get to the third place finishers, and start doing the bracket as it's automatically set up. First off, shout out to Telegraph, or The Telegraph. I think it's a UK-based paper. They have this entire simulator set up, and it has seemingly worked really good for a lot of people. I saw it online. I think it was like a Welsh football ASMR channel on YouTube was the one that introduced it to me, and then I saw it for a couple other people. So first off, shout out to them for finding this and posting about it, and then shout out to Telegraph for making this and making it such a good and easy to navigate system. Now, Portugal, Colombia, Uzbekistan, and the DR Congo. DR Congo had to fight through the qualifier to make it at all to the tournament, and I think that's going to show here. They go up against Portugal match day 1. I think DR Congo loses. Uzbekistan, I actually think, is going to be one of the sleeper teams at this World Cup that could really make some noise in the latter stages. However, they play Portugal match day 2, and I think that's where the noise is going to come from. Colombia picks up a big win over DR Congo. Uzbekistan ends up drawing with Portugal, giving them their first point. And then Uzbekistan ends up beating DR Congo while Colombia beats Portugal. It won't be enough to elevate Uzbekistan into second place. It'll allow Portugal to move through in second, but it will be enough to definitely make Portugal feel worried and give Uzbekistan points into making it into third place. Now, England, Croatia, Panama, Ghana. Again, just a really interesting group in the long run to think about, because this Ghana team is really, really good. Panama is always a sleeper at the World Cup in terms of just making noise. They are one of those teams, they're kind of the fourth of the big three in CONCACAF, where Panama can definitely pop into any tournament, and you would not be surprised to see them make a deep run and pull off an upset over a USA or Mexico. I don't think their quality is going to be able to hold up against England and Croatia, but I do think Ghana definitely might have the quality to do it. Now, England, for whatever reason, always seems to struggle with Croatia, and I think that's going to show here, allowing Croatia to take the top of the group. And then I actually have Ghana making it as the third place team. So with that being said, let's go look at the third place finishers. I have the Czech Republic being one of the third place finishers. I have Paraguay being one of the top. I have Egypt. Is Norway supposed to be there? Hang on. Yeah, that's right. I do have Norway as the third place finisher, and I have Uzbekistan. That is 5 of the 8. Now, I think if I remember correctly, I said that Austria, Saudi Arabia, both are going to be on... No, Austria is one of them. So I have 2 spots left. I believe I said that Saudi Arabia, Ivory Coast, and Sweden all are going to be on under 3 points, leaving us with Ghana, Scotland, and Bosnia-Herzegovina. I think what it'll end up being is that Scotland barely squeaks through. They will be playing for their lives on that final match day to make it out of the group. And then I think Bosnia and Herzegovina are going to end up just holding off. Alright, I'm back. Sorry about that. Round of 32 and we already got a CONCACAF throwdown. Mexico, Canada, that's going to be a tough one. I think that this match day, or I think that this game specifically takes place in Mexico, so I will go with Mexico here. Ecuador, Paraguay, give me Ecuador to win. Netherlands, Brazil. That's a hard one. This is going to break the hearts of one of these nations, and I think in the long run, the nation that's going to end up being heartbroken is gonna be... I think Brazil's gonna be heartbroken here. Morocco, Japan, I'm going to have Morocco move on. I think that they are not going to have as strong a World Cup as 22, but I do think they make it past the round of 32. France versus Egypt, give me France. I think France is probably one of the best teams. They'll probably make the finals unless they run into Spain or Argentina. Well, they'll eventually run into Spain or Argentina, but whichever one, we'll have to really think about it then. Germany, Iraq, give me Germany. Again, that's probably one of my final four if everything plays out correctly. Scotland, South Korea. I'm going to take South Korea here to make it to the round of 16. Scotland will be very happy to make it out of the group stage for the first time, but I think South Korea's quality is just going to be a little bit too much. Croatia, Uzbekistan, give me Croatia. Turkey, Bosnia, Herzegovina. Y'all, are you seeing that final? Okay, there's one matchup that I'm just not looking forward to having to talk about now. Bosnia, Herzegovina, Turkey. That's a really, really spicy one. Is that actually even possible? I thought that you... Oh, that's right. Bosnia and Herzegovina is in Canada's group. Give me Turkey. Belgium, Czech Republic, Actually, I think Czech Republic pulls off the upset there. Portugal, England, again, a big heartbreaker. I think that this ends up being Ronaldo's final World Cup match. Give me England. Spain over Algeria. Switzerland versus Austria. Give me Switzerland here. Argentina, Uruguay. Messi. Oh, well, actually, I don't think that Rat is playing. Give me Argentina. Colombia, Norway. Give me Colombia. And then this matchup. Give me USA. Ecuador, France. Give me France. Netherlands over Mexico. Germany over Morocco. South Korea, Croatia. That's a really interesting game to me. I'm not really sure who I would pick. I think I'll take South Korea over Croatia. England versus Spain, give me Spain, because England is always in pain. Turkey versus the Czech Republic, give me the Czech Republic. Argentina, USA. It's going to be Argentina. USA should have brought Brian Schwacke in goal. He can stop Messi. Matt Turner or Matt Freese, whichever Matt starts, will not be stopping Lionel Messi. You should have brought Schwacke. Schwacke is in his head. Colombia, Switzerland, give me Colombia. All right. Quarters. France, oh my Lord, have mercy. France versus the Netherlands. I'm going to take France. Spain versus the Czech Republic. I'll take Spain. Germany, South Korea. I think I'm going to pick the upset here and pick South Korea. And then Argentina versus Colombia. I think this is where Messi's final World Cup ends. Colombia takes the win. Colombia beats South Korea. And then, honestly, this would be my pick for the World Cup finals. But I'm going to go with Spain here. Spain, Colombia. Give me Spain. And then my third place matchup will obviously be France winning third place. So a very, very difficult World Cup to predict, but we will see how it plays out. Leave your predictions in the comments section and let me know, who do you have as your Cinderella for